Hello, my name is Basima Damey, and my partner is Ben Kohler. Our topic is on navigation woes, and just as a spoiler alert, there will be a cat killed in that intoxicating and very dangerous river. Now, man's fascination with space and the sea and navigation goes to early BC in the 3rd century. The Minoans of Crete had palaces and sanctuaries that aligned with the equinox of the sun and with certain stars. Also, in Greece, there's accounts of using the stars for navigation to count where a person is. An example of this would be Homer's Odyssey, where Odysseus is guided to stay to the right of the bear, which is a star. Historically, another example are the Phoenicians in Carthage. They used a sounding weight at around 500 BC to measure how deep the water was and how far away from the land they were. Also, they picked up sediment from the bottom of the water to know, and expert navigators would know then where they were. Next, in the Middle Ages, from the Middle East, the magnetic compass was pioneered. Also, it was interchangeable knowledge, or knowledge became interchangeable because of seafarers and the constructs of civilization becoming more prevalent and making further advancements. Then, in the age of exploration, this is a time where countries go to other places to explore for gold, glory, and God. And Portugal was an early pioneer in the early 15th century. They were colonialists, and they set up observatories to measure how the angle of the sun and how that was relative to the stars and time. Also then, from the Portuguese, Spain became a lead explorer and pioneer in navigation. When Columbus began exploring, he had the cross staff, which I'll get into, the compass and nautical charts, and an hourglass to measure time. Now, the cross staff was an instrument that was used early on for navigation. It was essentially a large cross you could think of, and they would hold it against their cheek and look directly at the sun to measure the angle, and then from that, again, this is all at noon, and from that, then they would measure the horizon from that. And it was a very painful process, and then, using all of this, continuing to advance, in the modern times, the octant was created. Now, although he's not accredited for it, Newton was the major innovator for this. The octant Newton set up the reflective glass, which allowed for him to look at the sun and also look at the horizon without blinding himself. And also, he also didn't have to physically turn his body. Then, Hadley and Godfrey, two individuals, were accredited for creating the octant, which is essentially a reflective glass, but allows to measure the angle and the position. Also then, in modern times, replacing this octant was the sextant. And from this, one could find all the essential elements to position, which are latitude, longitude, time, speed, and altitude. Now, what the sextant does is it allows you to set up where you would look at the sun, and also from the back look at the horizon, all without moving again. But it also measured the angle, and it kept account of time from other advancements. Also then, as society became more civilized and globalized, many of these major countries set up lighthouses that were used for checkpoints, essentially, for these great these great explorers to continue on their paths. Eventually then, this was used for a long time, and the sextant is still used today. But eventually what happened is that the space race, as a byproduct of that, of sending a person to the moon as national pride, a lot of good things actually came from it. We got GPS and satellite, which is, for all our purposes, all that we need to know. The Sputnik was the first artificial satellite launched into space, and then shortly after, more satellites were launched to measure the GPS and the time. Satellites were then used to give exact location. However, after the first satellite that was supposed to be for this purpose, the time shortly failed and it was a failure. But through modern advancements, we can see that today, for example, our cell phones that we have, they have time, we can measure latitude, we can get exact locations. Satellites come crashing down and we're completely hopeless and we need to get across this, again, dangerous river. We can still, ships still have the sextant as a reliable source to find latitude, longitude, and the altitude. And now, we'll finally kill this bloody cat.
Okay, we have a confession to make. The real cat that we were going to use didn't really work out. So, we have this fake cat to use. But in all fairness, we are still going to strand and kill a cat. Now it's time for us to kill our cat. So, across there is the island where we wish to strand our cat. And in between is this nice river, which is 9 meters across, with a current of 1 meter per second downstream. In order to get our cat to land on the island across stream, we want to fire it at 3 meters per second at an 80-degree angle downstream, and it will eventually reach the island where it will be stranded and forced to die. So we're going to put it in the water, aim it at 80 degrees, and give it a nice push, and it'll make its way across the river.